Welcome to the Microsoft Security Insights Podcast with your hosts, Franklin Grimberg and Edward Walton, where we discuss Microsoft 365 security and Azure security news and products. Recorded September 15th, 2021. Hello, Franklin.
Hello, Edward. I hear it's been a good week for you.
It has been a good week for me. You know why it's been a good week for me, Franklin? Because I matter now. I have my certification profile
You
fixed.
exist now.
I exist. I went in and I had 4 certifications. They needed to be the renewal, and it's not like the renewal is hard. But I actually was able to go do it. Didn't have to open up another browser to get the answer, but it was some of them that made me think. I had to renew my Azure. Rather than me try to talk about the title of it, I'll just talk about the test it gives you, because it's like one of them's Azure Security of something, administrator, associate, or whatever, 365 expert, something else, and something else. So I got 3 of them done. So any test that was associated with the MS 500, I renewed that for another year or 2, or whatever. What is it, a year now?
I think they do it yearly.
Yeah, whatever test or certification that I got by virtue of the AZ 500, I renewed, and I got a 365 enterprise security expert, whatever that was, new, and I got 1 more to do. I think I sent you a screenshot, so I'll get the other one done whenever I get time. But I want to give you kudos to something. Sometimes we do what we do so much that we're smarter than we think we are. Remember, I kept telling you my computer was crashing. I'm like, oh my God, did someone get into my home network, right? And this is my personal computer. And it would crash and freeze. And I'm like, what is going on? So I said, well, I went and looked at all the services. I went into MDE, all my stuff in my lab, my house is in MDE. I didn't see anything. No warning. I'm like, what is going on? So I unplugged it from the internet and it didn't crash. I said, see, someone is C2ing me. And when they do get in, they're crashing it. But that theory got thrown out the window too, because it crashed again. It just froze. It didn't blue screen, it just froze. The screen was stuck on it. And sure enough, you were right. It was a memory module.
Oh, okay.
It took a minute though, because they had 4 slots, 4 DIMMs, right? I don't have a memory tester. So you got to put it in one at a time, take it out. Take it out.
But isn't there like an onboard thing that you can do the memory tests? I mean,
I did that. Remember, you go into
really?
the BIOS and it says test the memory. And then when I tested the memory, nothing came back. So I was able to just get on my hands and knees, take the cover off. The cover still off the PC. I'm scared to put it back on just in case it crashes again. But I was able to isolate out of the 4 DIMMs, I found it. So it took a while because the machine has 32 gig of RAM. And each one of those are 8. So I'm working with 8. So time to boot up. I don't know. Windows senses that the memory has changed, so you swap file changes and all that, right? So it's slow, and then luckily I got it on the 3rd try, right? It was the 3rd DIMM, because then I'm going, well, what if it isn't a DIMM? What if it's the slot in the motherboard? So then I took that same, I literally took 45 minutes out of my day doing this. Each DIMM, 1 DIMM in each slot, booted up, and you had to wait because it didn't freeze up at the same interval every time. Because I had a clock on, right on the board. This one, I booted it up, it crashed at this time. But sure enough, it was not a bad slot on the motherboard. It was just that 1 DIMM, and then I was able to repeat it, and then so that's what it was.
Now it's cheap now, so you can
yeah,
get that taken care of. The thing is, you got the cover off. It always reminded me, nowadays it's very easy just to take apart the computer. They have 1 screw, take it off. But remember the day where you used to have to unscrew like 20 screws to get into the machine and all that stuff? It's like, you could always tell that I worked on the machine because there would be no screws in the machine at all. You could just walk over, take off whatever you want, pull out the NIC card. There's definitely going to be no screw there. So
yeah, I was notorious where if I couldn't find the screw. But I remember one time way back in the day, I'm dating myself. We had a server outage, and we couldn't figure out. But when you wanted to check the server was up. I might have been working at HP or something, What happened was when I put the NIC back into it, this is just back in the day. You had the NIC, you slide down to the PCI slot, whatever one it was, and you screw the little piece that sits on the motherboard. You put down, you screw on. I didn't put the screw in, and the heat made the NIC come out of the slot. So when you looked in it, it was in there, and then sure enough, I looked at the right angle, and you could see the gold teeth on the IC slot down in there. Like, just raised up, right? It was sort of at an angle. I pressed it back down back there, and I screwed it back down, and sure enough, I looked like a genius. I didn't tell anybody it was my fault. I didn't put the screw in there. And then plugged it back in. It was an old compact something, ProLiant. Might have been a ProLiant back in the day. But other than that, man, rainy down here in Georgia. I had a good weekend though. I went to Knoxville and ran the Great Smoky Mountains 5K on Friday.
You got first place?
Marathon. I took third place.
Oh, okay.
Overall. And then I took 29th in a half marathon. I really should have been in the top 15. But when I tell you, I used somebody else's little nutrition that you eat when you're on, and because I forgot mine, I stopped at every porta potty on the course. I just did. I can't be the guy across the finish line that said
it's kind of like going to a conference where they give you like the little stamp card. You have to go to every single booth.
I did.
Did they do that for you? So you got a stamp at every single stop there.
So the people I was racing against, that I was in front of, up until about mile, it kept bothering me until I got to mile 10. But people like, I thought you were in front of me. They didn't see me going to porta potty, and then I come back out, I run past them again. And since we run in the mountains, you turn the curve, you don't see anybody. Run back in the porta potty. The people pass me again. And I finally, the last stop I did was mile 10. I said, it's going to be what it's going to be. And the crazy part about it, TMI for this podcast, there was someone decided they weren't going to stop at the porta potty in this show. People were looking out like, oh my God, the race is not that serious.
Right? But, as they say, if you're not first, you're last. So give that person credit.
Yeah, well, that person beat me. I won my age group, 50 to 55. And then, like I said, to 29th. I should have really been in the top 15. It was a hard course. So when you go, they drive you down to the start and you run up. So my oil light came on right around mile 8 or 9, man. Your transmission getting slipping. And every light on my dash came on. You can't, trying to chase with young guys. It's hard. But, I did all right. I got a bunch of medals. I sent you the pictures, right? So,
oh, yeah.
Big thing, right? The 5K was where I get to show my talents. I'm just flat out faster than all those people, right? And I thought I had second, and this young guy caught me about 2.5 miles in. And I tried. So I said, well, I got third. So I look back at third place got too far back. So I got it. I got good prize and everything and had a good time. So that's it. That's my personal stuff. That's it, man. I'm all right. I got a good beer. Red Cup security to our listeners, right? Inspiration comes in liquid form.
Well, you've been doing more security this week than me. So what have you been up to on the security side? So
I got 3 things to talk about. So, and I'm pretty sure we might have talked it out of band, but I didn't go into detail. So in Mcas, let me.
Hope everybody just stop the podcast now. They're no longer listening because you said
this is the best product they ever had in their life. So let me refresh my screen. Can you make me a presenter? I want to share something with everybody.
Sure. Your host.
Okay. So share screen. Screen 2. Yes, share. And to our supporters and listeners that are watching us, I'm sorry if I'm looking away. So in Cloud App Security, if you go to Cloud Discovery, and then you go into, actually, you can go to either one. Cloud Discovery is not necessary. You need to go into settings. So in settings, there is something called user monitoring. And in this, you can set up a banner so that if a person in your infrastructure that has MDE on their endpoint, which is a requirement, you have to have a Microsoft security baseline that's been pushed to the machine by virtue of Microsoft Endpoint Manager / Intune, and you have to have MDE deployed and machine onboarded. Once that's done, and you have to have integration turned on between Mcas and MDE, which is easy. So I'll walk everyone through what it is. So in here, you have to make sure that this is on. Enforce app access, and then configure the severity for signal sent to the defender for endpoint. Now, what this does is that enabling this will block access to apps marked as unsanctioned. You go in and sanction unsanctioned apps in there, but there is a monitor feature. Now, there used to be a very layman's way of doing this, right? That you could do everything from conditional access to buying a product and then doing API calls to do a session control and enforcement. But if you just wanted to monitor it, you had to tag it or maybe create a policy, but they wanted low level or easier way to do it. When I say they, I meant Microsoft. So you can allow people to bypass apps marked as monitored. I'm not sanctioning you, saying that you could use it, and I'm not unsanctioning the app, which causes MDE to block it at the endpoint. And this right here is super important. If you do this, you have to make sure that you set the right severity for the signals coming in. Because if you don't, you'll get an informal, it'll still generate an alert, but you may not trigger an incident because the severity is not high enough. So you got to figure that out. And there's no technical way to do this, but especially if you're just monitoring it, right? But informational is here, but let's say we go ahead and go medium. You can also send a URL to say, here are the rules of engagement and usage of our organization. You're being monitored. So what happens when someone tries to use Google, whatever, it will come in. And then they get 1 hour before it warns them again, you are being monitored. And so when you have this on, you save, okay? It asks, are you sure you want to automatically block any cloud app that's marked as unsanctioned? You got to be careful with this, because if you tag unsanctioned, the effects are not immediate. It could be anywhere between 5 minutes to 24 hours before people go, I can't get to Google Drive, or I can't get to this or that. So you go, yes, because I'm unsanctioned. Once you have that in place, you then have to go to user monitoring.
So can we take a step back? I want to ask you some questions on the screen that we're just at.
Okay, let me go back up here. There you go.
Okay, so if let's say they're blocking, give me one of the storage providers out there,
Dropbox.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Will this stop? Is it only from Internet Explorer? That's a joke. Edge, or will it be from any browser, all of their client sort of apps? Is there anything, or is it when we're blocking it and they're saying the bypass, does that have to come from a browser, or can that be from any app?
Any app. I've tested it with a fat client and browser. Okay. Now, the only two browsers I tested enforcement was Edge and Chrome. I suspect that Brave would do the same thing since it's a Chromium product. I don't know about Firefox, but I'm going to test it because I blocked Google Drive in my home lab, and my wife uses Firefox. So I'll run to her desk and see if I can log on, right? And it works, because I had a friend come over and they needed to send a image. They're a graphic designer, and the person needed it right away. And I can't get to Google Drive. I'm like, what? What do you mean? They were on one of my machines. And they were like, I'm on your wireless and I can get to it on my phone. MDE is the enforcement entity. Right.
So, hey, I got a question here from Trip. Is there a way to maybe check real time in Mcas if it's blocking something, like a front end view, or do you have to drill down each rule, like specific or blind?
So when it blocks it, you get an alert. So it will generate an alert. This application was monitored and or blocked, and you can see it in there.
Okay.
Surely do it.
All right, on to your next part.
So once you have this in, remember, the Defender for Endpoint is the enforcement mechanism, and you got to have that turned on. And the way you turn that on
is that only Windows 10, or is that also any other OS for Defender for Endpoint?
10, 8.1, anything that you can enroll in MDE. It's browser based. So even if you go to a Linux machine, it's going to see it if it's enrolled in MDE.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So I don't have yeah, I do have it up. So if you go here, you need to go into settings. Now for our listeners and watchers that are watching on Twitch, I am now in the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, the legacy portal, not the unified portal. I just go in here for simplicity. You go to settings, and in advanced features, you have to make sure that two things are turned on in MDE in the portal, have to be turned on. You have to have custom network indicators turned on, which will tell you what security baseline will work so that this works. If you have ASR turned on, I think that takes care of it. Attack surface reduction, that baseline takes care of it. Or you can create a custom policy. It recommends which policies you should have that's going to make this work. So now you have to have that turned on. Then you have to come down here and make sure that MDE understands cloud app security integration. Just a quick slide across. So just read the articles and it'll tell you which machines, right?
So it seems kind of strange that the go back up to the one that you just mentioned. So the custom network indicators.
Yes. So you're ahead of the game. Let me show you something.
Okay.
What it does when Mcas sees this, it calls MDE, hey, I was told to monitor this and this person is trying to use the app, or I was told to block this and this person is trying to use the app. What you going to do about it? So MDE is like, I'll handle it. So what it does, it writes a custom indicator. So if you come down here and go to indicators, that was land surveyor. It was custom detections. I'm sorry, I said custom indicators, but it does it. There it is, right here. See that?
Okay.
It automatically put those in.
That's how it's using an engine that's already in place by throwing out the custom indicator.
Yeah. So I was just doing an unsanctioned cloud app was blocked. And I was wondering why TeamViewer wasn't working in my house. So I forgot I put it in here, right? And then I blocked just to see if my Navy Federal app, which I bank with, just whatever. Could I try to get around it? But it automatically wrote the URLs on what it saw. I didn't have to go put these in. So what you have to be careful.
It makes sense. They're just utilizing the functionality that was in place and throwing it out there.
Yeah. So once you have that in place, and then you come down here and say, okay, now that I have the enforcement infrastructure in place, what do I do next? So now you have to go into cloud app security, go into settings, and go down to user monitoring. You got that put in, and once that's done, and you can either use the default message, right? It'll go, when someone tries to surf, they'll get it here. It will populate the app that's being monitored there. It automatically says, you're trying to use Google Drive or you're trying to use Dropbox. For improved security, your organization will allow access in a monitor mode. Access is only available from a web browser. It will disable the applications and force you to go through the browser. So if you have the Dropbox client on your machine, no working, right? It'll force you to go through a browser. So okay. This sort of suggests that it will work with any browser, but I've only tested on Chromium browsers. So I Edge, Chrome, Brave. I don't know what the other Chromes are. So when you have that, now you need to go into the cloud discovered apps. I'm gonna leave the page. So how do I go about it? How do I make an app? So what I do is I can go look and say, I just say Google. Oh, don't put the domain name. Don't like that. Just put Google. Dashboard. Where am I at? I think discovered apps. Oh, you gotta have MDE, right? I was looking on the global. I don't have any firewalls for you now, right? So now if I go in here and I type Google, anything that Mcas saw related to Google, it knows. So you got to be careful, because if you just do Google top level domain, it will block Google Analytics, Google Hangout, Google Cloud Platform, Google Contacts. You have to be very specific about the app. So you can see Google Drive, I put as monitored. And what you do is you come all the way to the right and you just go monitor. It's in preview. Will it make the final feature? Who knows? But I found something out. If you do this and you have safe links, a safe attachment policy, and MDO, which banner takes precedence? MDO.
Sounds like a good exam question.
MDO does. So the banner wouldn't pop up. The one I put in Mcas, it popped up the banner that says you are being restricted from this because of safe links.
But that's only if it's coming with inside an email or just in general.
In general.
Really?
And I'm like, wait a minute, this is a bug. You know,
That's
so
why would because as an MDO, are you sure that's coming from MDO?
yes. Because I saw the banner and I'm like, where did I see this banner from? It looks like a safe links banner. Safe links banner. Not safe links. You get the red banner in the browser. I'm like, okay. So I went back through it.
I'm trying to remember the safe links.
It looks like this.
No, go to the settings for it.
Oh, I'm trying to get to it. So if you go into security, and I'm going the long way, I could have just go through the unified portal. But when you go here in policy and rules, maybe. Or alert policy.
Go back to threat.
Yeah, I think it's a threat. Yeah, threat. It's threat. Threat policy. And so, right here.
Safe links one down.
Safe links.
There you go.
I don't have a policy.
Press create.
There it is.
Others.
If I go here, that's the banner.
Right. So go back.
You have to put it in.
Go back one. I want to read here. Apply real-time Euro scanning. Of course, my Zoom is in the.
And I don't know it's because that Google Drive is centered for moving files. That this banner takes precedence. And the only way you can get the nomenclature that you want from the Mcas banner is to come over here, go to here. No, what am I doing? Go to here, go to settings in Mcas, go down to monitor user, grab that information in your custom banner, copy it, go to here, edit notifications, custom default text, put it here, paste.
Are you doing ASR stuff on this device?
Mm-hmm.
Can you show me the settings for that?
Let's see what I got. Oh, you mean inside MEM, you mean?
Yeah, I think you might actually be hitting up against a different it's an ASR protection, I think.
That may be what it is. I'll grab it later. I got too many banners open. I was doing something.
Yeah, you might actually be hitting I can't remember the name of the ASR side that does this.
But I found it interesting. I was able to duplicate that. Now, what me thinks that it may be an ASR root in the background that's generating that banner and making it take precedence. But if I change the safe links text the way you just saw me do, it still won't go to Mcas, but the verbiage will be what I wanted in Mcas. So it's misleading because it also makes it seem as though it's actually being blocked. But it's not being blocked. If you read it, say you are being blocked, but then inside the dumb thing it says, but if you want access, hit bypass. So I confirmed this. I hit some of my buddies at Microsoft about the Mcas. I said, dude, is this? And he's like, yeah, it's not supposed to work that way. So
yeah,
that was pretty.
I think there's some ASR stuff that's probably sharing the MDO side, and that's why you're getting that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Trip has some questions right now. So can Mcas monitor web usage, which might monitor usage, which allowing the end user to browse, but maybe sandbox or monitored? I don't understand that question.
You're talking about a conditional access policy. And then you have to have an app connector to really have that session control as though it's a proxy. Meaning if you want to actually block and control sessions real time, you have to go buy a business version of those or developer version. And then there's a setup. And then it references the API and you can do real-time session control based on conditional access, login, MFA, all of that. So this is just a low-hanging fruit way of doing it so that you're not essentially blocking without any context on why you're doing it. You're just saying if you see it, block it, or you see it, monitor it. But if you're saying he can do it if he completes the MFA, he doesn't violate, unknown login location, impossible. You can put all type of conditional access. As long as he doesn't meet all of these, go ahead and let him do it. But if he meets any one of these, you cannot do it. So that's why you want to go ahead and do that. So inside Mcas, if you do that, that is going into here and going into conditional app control. And you can control the app connectors. You can see the ones I have. I can control AWS, 365, Azure, Box, and G Suite, but I own these. So now I have a business or developer license, and now I can control real-time session and inspection. So when you go buy it and you integrate it, you'd be surprised what you can see. I can see all the way to the file, what they did with the file, what they tried to do with it. And then when you combine this with AIP, I can read that real time. Okay, I can say redact that. Take that file out of what's the name? Why did they do that? But you have to do it with connected apps. So you got to go set up an AWS. Yeah.
So Andy has a question. Should you use a specific message per portal to clarify which module is actually doing the block?
That makes sense. That's a good thing. So that the way I could have tested, I could put safe links in the MDO one and put Mcas in the other one and then see which one pops up, right? But by this time, when you're troubleshooting this stuff, you're trying to make sure that you're not grooving up results by doing something. So what I did was I blew the system all the way away that I could and build it back up, and I still got the same results. It works. It's just that it gives you the incorrect message of how it's working, and it makes you think the wrong enforcement technology is doing it. But now that I think about it, I think your ASR rules, I think that's what it is. And
yeah, I can't remember. I'm very tired this week, so I can't remember the name of it. But most likely, I mean, obviously, it's going to share the same engine as MDO to figure out what the deal is. So that would make sense.
Yeah, it's. I know it's trying to be done, but this is in preview. So that whole monitor thing, I used to do it by doing tags, and then if I tag something, because I didn't want to sanction, I didn't want to actually just tag it, and then if I tagged it, that made it monitor it. But they added the preview feature in Mcas to make it low hanging fruit to be able to do it, right? Easy to do.
Right.
It works. It's just that it's portraying how it works incorrectly, and I diminishing return on investment to go troubleshoot this because it's giving the desired result. You're scaring the user not to do anything bad because you think that you're watching them, right? But if you really want to get down into control, you need a conditional access policy in combination with a connected app, and it's all in the documentation. Then you can get very granular control as though you're doing like a proxy, and that's how you do it.
All right.
The other thing I want to show. So one of the frustrations that you have is with the unified portal when they show stuff.
Frustration
you have with the unified portal when you write the exam, publish it, and then the portal changes, or they show these webinars.
Write the learning material. I'm not allowed to deal with the exam.
Learning material, and then when they show these webinars with all the goodness, when you go to your portal, it's not there, and then they go, "Oh, you need to be in the private preview program." I am. Oh, it's a slow roll. How slow? Right.
We're doing A/B testing.
Yeah, there you do it. But let me show you a cool thing. So whatever I've done with my tenant is finally fully integrated into the private preview program. So now my portal is getting the updates fairly quickly. So what I like now is that MDI, Microsoft Defender for Identity, formerly known as Azure Advanced Threat Protection, which is the protection mechanism for AD on-premise for lateral movement.
Which was formerly known as ATA.
ATA, Advanced Threat Analytics. Yes. It's in the unified portal. Look at that. It automatically comes in and populates your domain controllers, but it also has an Exchange server entity tag built in by virtue of the debacle around Exchange.
Oh,
It can
okay,
go
okay.
in, and if you have Exchange servers, it will scour the directory and populate them here and let you know if they're at risk. I don't have an Exchange run on my environment.
So where did
What
you
I,
go for this again?
so you go down to the unified portal, go to
All right.
settings, and then
Oh, so they put the settings out there. You're not investigating yet, and
mm-mm,
okay,
mm.
that we
But
know of yet.
the investigation is coming. I saw a roadmap. It's coming. That you could that the investigation inside the unified portal is going to be ubiquitous across all the products.
Yeah, they're gonna move that over.
Yeah, it's
You
it's
know,
taking time.
I did this week, which was kind of funny. Go to the evaluation and tutorials.
Mm-hmm.
Um, go over there.
Evaluation and tutorials.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Go to tutorials.
Should write your name in here.
Uh, yeah, go down one. Oh no, go back up. My fault. Go to the tutorials. Click on yeah. So the third one, which is the automated investigation.
Mm-hmm.
So this Word document that you download, you can get the simulation file.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty. I actually decrypted that and took the macro that they have in there to see what they were doing. So it was kind of interesting to see how they're going about doing the attack and putting a scheduled task in, and they have an encoded executable that they have in there, and all run through PowerShell. It was kind of interesting.
I did that
Interesting
last year.
to see.
I
What's
did that
that?
last year. I did the same thing last year.
I
I can sh-
never looked at the attack that they were doing.
so
So
I extrapolated the attack out. I'll show you. Give me a second here. So, uh, where do I find? Where is it? Scheduled task. God, I'm getting dumb. I'm doing so much high task and that's taskbar navigation. That's what I want. I thought scheduled task was just in control panel. Why am I missing this? Real time recovery region, sound, speech recognition, so and so system, troubleshooting is administrative tools. Task scheduler. God, I'm just getting dumb here. So if you go to task scheduler, give it a minute, and go to the library and go to Microsoft, I think it's Office. I must have deleted it out. I ran it on my machine so I could see what the scheduled task looks like, but it would put it in. I must have deleted it out. But I did the same thing you did because I wanted to reuse that VB script to try to do something.
yeah.
If you alter that VB script, it will stop working. You have to be very careful if you try to reuse it. There's something funny about it because the VB script is embedded into the Word document. If you modify the Word document, it'll stop working.
Oh, I don't need the code. I have my own anyways, so it
You
doesn't
got you.
matter.
Yeah. I was just playing around there and I was
Just
beating up on
wanted
it.
to
Just
see
what
what
I'm
we're doing.
So one last thing, I want to show something. So in the unified portal, oh yeah, that was it. So I did the settings. The identities are here. I can't talk about some of the other stuff that's going to come inside of this syslog notifications when you set up your syslog server. But let me say it in a reverse manner. There's no failover. So when you set up syslog integration with MDI and you make the sensor on the domain controller send to your SIM, if that domain controller dies, your SIM integration is not tenant aware. It is sensor aware. That's problematic. Like one sensor dies, I no longer am able to send telemetry to my SIM. This is going to change. So you'll be able to do it, right? And you can see, goes to the IP address there, and then, edit configurations. You're going to see a mass improvement in the SIM
All right.
integration.
So you've become a pro Microsoft Defender for Identity. You weren't into that for a long time. Defender for Identity over Mcas, what do you think?
That's a good question. I'm a waffle and say yes, and I'll tell you why. The fidelity and the relevance of the alerts coming out of MDI are better than Mcas. MDI don't send a lot of false positives. If you're getting true alerts, you got an issue. You start seeing people going around your environment, right? And you started getting these alerts, because I had a customer and I was talking to them and they were alerting like crazy. And someone set up a tenable Nessus scanner and didn't tell them. And it was just scanning. It was running the exports in the background. And they thought they use it, but it alerted them because someone put that automatic scanner on the subnet that wasn't authorized. So now MDI is seeing this attack from an IP address on the subnet. It's like, that's not an admin subnet. Well, they thought something was going on, but it wasn't. It was just an IT guy that didn't follow procedure and deployed one and didn't tell anybody, right? So I would go with MDI. I've done a lot of that within the last 6 months. I mean,
Yeah,
I
no,
did.
I know that you have, so that's why I was pointing that
Yeah,
out.
yeah, I've done a lot. I think I did a 200, 250 domain controller setup. Who has 250 domain controllers? It's a large customer. But I'm like, it still seems like a lot of domain controllers, right? And there's a couple of GPO things that you have to do in MDI to do some enforcement and some detections. Otherwise, certain events won't get written and you can't see them. It resonated to me because I took the SANS 555 exam and they asked something about that. And I go, oh, that's what that is.
All right, where are you
That's
at
how,
with your 508?
I don't have a voucher and I'm about to pull the trigger and just pay out of my pocket. Right? I was trying
Oh,
to get
now
someone
there's
to,
too much pressure on me because I pushed you for it. Then if you don't like it, then you're gonna be like, hey Frank, you owe me 8K. Is that what's gonna
let me tell
happen
you
or
something,
what?
man. You know how many things I do that I don't like? I don't like running, but I like drinking beer. So you got to have checks and balances, right? You know,
You don't like running. I don't believe that.
I don't. I know. It's just the thing about running, especially when you do distance, is such when you jump in with 2 feet. I've been out on runs when you're 5 miles out, you don't get to quit. You got 5 miles to go back, brother, or take an Uber, which I have done before. I've been on a long run and had my phone and just took Uber back home. I started feeling goofy in the sun. I said, this is not going to end well. Get in the shade, get an Uber, take your butt home.
All right. So do
And
you have anything else from security here?
yes, one more thing for security.
All right.
So back to my unified portal, go back to settings at the very bottom for those that have it, M365 Defender, go down, device discovery. So
Right.
device discovery is to download a scanning add-on to a machine that's enrolled in MDE. It has to be enrolled in MDE. I didn't believe the documentation. I tried it. If you try to install it on a machine that's not enrolled in your tenant, it will not work. It pulls something from your tenant that identifies you, and then when you set it up, you have to go grab this banner that pops up.
So what does this discovery thing do?
It scans the subnet that machine looks on based on the IP addresses you put on, and it does a lot of different stuff. So I can look at monitored networks. So any machine that you have enrolled in MDE, if they are joining networks, you can see wireless. You can tell I stayed at a Hyatt. I was at a White Castle. These are SSIDs of networks that my machines have been on. And if they're onboarded. And if you have Windows 10 machines that are on the subnet that this is scanning and is not onboarded, it will tell you. Even if the MD is installed on the server. So think of a poor man's Qualys.
So why do I care about this?
Well, you want to understand with this mobile environment that we are, what your people are doing and where they're going on and what networks are they joining, right? Because if you're doing investigation or forensics and you're trying to figure out what were they doing? Were they at home? Were they on Starbucks? Did they get pineappled? Right? I can look and I can tell if the machine was properly enrolled. So this is a creep mechanism too, because it'll point out machines that aren't. So I can go monitor state. It also can pull in devices, proxy, firewall, router, switch, as long as the product is using SNMP v3. So you can pull in the health, the up and down, and the availability of network devices that you can do authenticated SNMP. Sierra November Mike Papa Simple Network Management Protocol. For those who are not picking out my acronym, right? It's an old protocol. I think V3 is authenticated, so it's been around, and so now I can see that. So these are the networks, and I can filter, certain things, monitor state. I like it because I can do an authenticated scan. Authenticated scan is, no, this wasn't there first. I do not know what this does. Assessment jobs, you can add. So I guess you go to assessment jobs and be able, do I create assessment job? But I got it running. Oh, that's it. I did a test scan of the home office. So now I can check who ran the scans, right? So you can force authenticated scan. So I can go here and I can look at it and it'll tell me the range that I did, scan the networks. It's actually pretty fast. So if it can't authenticate, it'll come back and say if there was a response, SMP is running, but I wasn't able to authenticate because you didn't give me the authentication stream or you had the incorrect community stream. You don't have to have read write. Read only is sufficient. In essence, for those who come from a network background, right? RO, just grab the MIB and take a look. But RI, you want to make changes where you can manage it. So think of the old SolarWinds engineering tool set where you could do all these things. Land Surveyor. There are quite a few products that can do this. I thought this was just a nice little add-on. It's free. It's part of MDE. You download it. I got it up and running in about an hour. MDE, oddly enough, something I had was blocking it, or it was a pop-up in the background I didn't see. But you just don't get to go install this. You have to log into the environment on the machine that has MDE, or it will not let you do it. And it's going to give you a keyword and say, once you log on, you get this banner, put this in. So like two-factor. So you can't put unauthorized machines on your network. It will not let you do it. And it will censor your machine as part of your MDE subscription/tenant. It will not like a foreign machine to come on and do it either. So I've tried to circumvent it and put it on a machine that wasn't managed, put it on a machine that wasn't joined to my network, that wasn't onboarded. You can't do it. So I then took a machine that was part of another MDE environment. Nope, won't let you do it. The machine has to be in your environment. So those are two things I sort of, was pilling around today and doing that. So that's all. Hope that was.
That's it. You've done more than me, that's for sure.
Customers asked, I had to go figure it out. I got a nice lab. Let's go take a look at it. And then, my MEM and my ASR and a lot of my baseline stuff is sort of messed up in my lab. I need to go clean them up. And I got so many conflicting rules. I don't know which one's taking precedence. So I think I'm just going to zero them out and then put them back in. But one thing you also know when you do this, if you haven't properly onboarded your machine into Intune/MEM, a lot of this stuff won't work. It needs to be managed. And it's so small in the paperwork that you will waste time troubleshooting and go, why is it not doing this? It's not onboarded. Yep. It's not even in the troubleshooting docs. It's just in the implementation docs. And you just go by it if you don't read it, right? And so those are the only things I've done, man. Not so much.
Yeah, there's a discussion out here on chat talking about sharing information and with the Microsoft security graph and so on. So I think it's more of a question of whether or not they're trying to get reputation of networks that they're connecting to and so on. And I think that a lot of that stuff Microsoft has. The question is, how much do they give it to you versus you're getting it in the service that's out there. But for the for your internal network is one thing. I think a lot of the scanning is also for your internal networking that we just saw to find devices. Is that right?
Yes.
Versus the Starbucks Wi-Fi that you should be concerned about anyways. Anyways.
There's diminishing return on that, right? I'm surprised nobody's, the listeners, if they do reply. Here's one of the major drawbacks. The remote stuff. VPNs drive that thing crazy, right? So what's the value if nobody's going into the office to tell the truth? And if they are at home on the network, yeah, I can get to see the networks they've been on, but you have to dig a little deep to get the value, which is why you asked the question, what does this give me? If you're having to do an investigation, you need to figure out where that machine was. This is just one piece of that puzzle, right? Because they won't tell you the IP. It'll just say, yep, this machine was on this SSID. This machine was on this network. That network may mean nothing to you, right? It probably won't if it was a pineapple or a fake SSID to route traffic through somebody's box to eventually get to the internet, and they're capturing you as a man in the middle.
All right.
But
I did do one security thing this week. It's called Azure AD Application Proxy. What is that?
I think rather than getting direct access to the application, something brokers that, and I believe that's to protect APIs at the endpoint from attack. I'm not really sure.
So basically, if you're in a situation where you have an internal application at your work, now all your users are remote for some unknown reason, and you still need for them to get access to those applications, and you don't want to set up a VPN, you can actually set up an internal proxy and have those users select that app that they think is going to their, that are going to the internal application. It's all being proxied through there for you. So you don't have to set up a VPN for everyone. So if you have a low usage app, specific app that you're dealing with, you can just set all that stuff up and not have to worry about the entire VPN scenario.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like direct connect, that's not the correct term for the new connectionless VPN in Microsoft's. Like you just go, there's a name for it. It's actually pretty fast. I've seen somebody use it as part of the Microsoft managed desktop solution out of Azure, but out of my skill set, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, so that was fun to do. All right, we are up against time. So unfortunately, the listeners had to listen to us this week and no guests.
Well,
What's going on for our future shows?
I like to let our listeners know that we eat the dog food. One of us does work, and so it was a little bit of break to start lining up. Next week, we should have our guest to come back on, a previous guest of the show, Michelle Jackman from Microsoft, to talk Defender IoT. I don't know if her peer Tom Quinn will accompany her. I will confirm with her tomorrow.
Not because of not because of her, but because of Defender for IoT, my favorite subject.
I know. And I owe you a projected guest list that I meant to send. I created the document I meant to send to you, so I got a note right here to do it. So I'll do it tomorrow. But we're going to line it up. I think you and I need to do some brainstorming here, man. It's time for us to reinvent the show like we reinvent it every year, right? It's time to, what's the next thing, right? I know we wanted to do like a 2 or 3 day session, a nightish.
That's going to be pushed till January. We
got to push it to January. I know you want to do a backdoors and breaches game. We need to line that up, figure out how we get some people to play that, right? So we got some things. This pesky job gets in the way of me doing the things I like. So you got to keep meat on the table, right? Other than that, well, thanks to our listeners that joined us. Thanks for those that are going to listen later on the podcast. We really enjoy it. We get to learn. I know that nobody's really gave us a whole lot of grief about things we say wrong, but it does keep us sharp and keep us honest, right? I love playing with the tech. And we will be back next week, and hopefully our guest will come on and talk about Defender for IoT Part 2. If not...
And how to cancel trial subscriptions of it.
Yeah, how to cancel trial subscription. I am trying to get someone to come on and talk about Microsoft Preview. We need to get more into the SNC stuff, security and compliance. So I'm trying to find someone to come talk about that. Because I'm hearing about it, how this is going to be a game changer. I signed up for it. I can see it. Better be careful. It's expensive. If you don't understand the pricing, you're gonna find yourself in a Frank situation.
Is that what we're calling it now? When people get surprising bills from Azure, it's a Frank situation.
In a Frank situation. All right.
All right. So, you have a good evening.
All right. You too, sir.
Till next week.
Till next week.